Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Serena, and today I wish I were Australian because it would make my talking videos sound so much cooler. But anyways, here we are, live from the United States of America, where I'm going to be telling you how to plan a travel gap year / long-term backpacking trip. So, when I was a wee little senior in high school, I decided that it would be best for me to take a year off before college to sort through something. Pretty late in the game, I might add. I got a job, saved up all my money, and planned a 10-month trip around the world. And yes, I broke my back, so I'm not traveling for 10 months, but I do know how to plan such a trip, and I can tell you what I wish I had done better. So here we are with this video, the second one of my travel series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell your friends. Stay tuned for the next video in this series where I'll be talking about more of the reasons why it might benefit you to take a gap year. Let's begin. First things first, you have a couple questions that you need to figure out. The first thing you gotta decide is, where do you wanna go? Because regions vary by price. So I went with the classic Southeast Asia because it's known to be a cheaper travel region and also good for first-time solo travelers. If you're going to somewhere like Australia, New Zealand, or Europe, it's gonna be more expensive. It just depends on the part of the world that you wanna go to. Once you figure out or get a sense of where you wanna go, you're gonna wanna decide, what do you wanna do? I decided that I would do a mix of backpacking, just straight up going from city to city, hostel to hostel, and doing workaways. From what I know, there's workaways and woofing. And workaways can be really any kind of work exchange experience. It can be being an au pair, or it can be working on a vineyard, working on a sailboat, working at a hostel. Woofing is organic farming. Both are super cool and charge a minimal fee to become a member, but I totally recommend it because you can save a lot of money by staying somewhere in exchange for work. You also don't have to go through these organizations. When I worked at a hostel in Cambodia, I had just showed up and asked if they could use some extra help in exchange for letting me stay there. Also is an option, but if you definitely want to take that path, I would recommend signing up for either organization. Obviously, if you're doing something through Workaways or Woofing or another organization that I haven't heard about, you're gonna be spending less money than you would backpacking, spending money on accommodation and food and experiences to fill your days. So that's something to consider too. You also want to figure out how long. Do you want to come home for holidays? Do you want to travel for a couple months and then come back and work? Do you want to travel for a full year or not have an end date in mind? To get a sense of how much money you're looking at needing, what I did was look up the regions that I wanted to travel to, find an average budget for that region, and multiply that by the number of days I expected to be there. Then I added in flights and transport. What might be helpful is multiplying the lowest possible daily budget and adding everything in, and then doing the highest possible daily budget so that you can get a good range. The number might be overwhelming at first, especially if you're in high school and you've never really supported yourself before, you don't know how much things cost. Get a job, get multiple jobs, and start early. I didn't decide that I wanted to take gap year until like the end of January of my senior year, and so I didn't get a job until about a month later. I started in March, and I was really fortunate to get a barista job where I could work 20 hours a week during the school year and 40 during the summer, with New York's minimum wage being higher than it is in most other states. I was really fortunate that I could save up money pretty quickly as a barista. And after that day job in the summer, I would work at a pizza shop for the night shift. And I also sold some clothes on Depop, but that wasn't a huge source of income. I maybe made like $40 from that. But every little bit counts. Like $40 could be 2 and a half days of my life backpacking. I know that getting multiple jobs sounds like a lot of work and just a lot of time, but if you can do it, I highly recommend it because you can get a lot of good experience, learn how to work well with other people, learn how to do different jobs, and it's all gonna help you become a fuller, more well-rounded person, which is possibly your goal of traveling too. But it can really come from anywhere, and working for it is a good place to start. Even though I worked a lot of jobs and was fortunate to earn kind of a lot in such a short amount of time, it was kind of not as much as I thought it was because everything's more expensive than you think. There's checked baggage fees, fees for hostels, admission fees for different experiences and sites that you're gonna see, and even if it's $1, it all adds up. Anyways, surrounded by all of these 20-somethings, I was truly the most broke backpacker in the game, and I don't recommend doing that. You want to have enough money to be able to support yourself and give back to the place that you're visiting and just not be stingy, really. You're gonna want to expect a bit of variation day to day in your travels. Some cities are more expensive in terms of accommodation and food. Sometimes you're gonna want to do more things. Like I couldn't even afford a Thai cooking class, which is such an iconic experience, but they were expensive. You're also gonna want to have a backup emergency fund in case you lose your passport, in case you get hurt. You just want to have enough money to be somewhat flexible with changes of plan. Like if you meet some incredible people and you want to stay an extra day somewhere but you already booked your bus and it's non-refundable, like do you miss the bus to have the experience, or do you take the bus because you don't want to pay twice? You're gonna want to buy people drinks on their birthdays. You can accidentally get scammed by a tuk-tuk driver. The flight could go up overnight when you were expecting something $50 less. Ideally, have enough money to be flexible. Highly recommend having just some space to not be worried all the time or obsessed with your plan. It stresses me out to be saying have more money, be able to travel more freely and abundantly. It stresses me out to be telling you guys that when I'm also advocating visiting countries that are still developing, where the dollar that you're stressing about spending for coffee because it cuts into your $15 daily budget, the same dollar is being used to feed a family of 4, probably a couple blocks from your hostel. So definitely just keep your privilege in check, especially when you're visiting a country that's considered developing and you're coming from a wealthier country. Just know that having more money, yes, it's a benefit to you and your experience, but it also is being spent in a country to strengthen their economy. And I think that's the important part of traveling with money. So before you even leave your home, you're gonna have medical expenses, possibly visa expenses, plus getting a passport. You're gonna want to go to a travel doctor, and you're gonna give them a list of the areas that you're going to, and they'll tell you all of the medications you may or may not need, as well as the shots that you may or may not need. And these can be pretty expensive, but for malaria medicine, because I needed to get it for like 5 or 6 months straight, it was so expensive. My mom and I searched for days and we're lucky to find some coupons. And also getting birth control for 10 months straight was a pretty big hassle, but you have to work that out with your insurance and it's a little difficult, but possible. For almost any region, you're gonna need to pick up travel diarrhea medication, and there are a bunch of shots that you might need. Some of them can be really expensive, so when you're budgeting, you're gonna wanna keep that in mind. So the vaccines depend on your home country and where you're going, so definitely get to your local travel doctor to discuss that. You, without a doubt, should not leave your home country without travel insurance. For me in the States, what you had to do was keep your insurance plan and add it on for an extra cost every month, but it wasn't too ridiculous of a cost. You would think it was more expensive than it was. I used World Nomads. It was really amazing what they were able to do for me when I broke my back in the Philippines and had to stay 3 days in a hospital, and they were really great. So highly recommend working with them. It depends what countries you're going to, but you might need to get a visa in advance. I originally wanted to go to China, but I was mystified by their visa process, so I just kind of scratched it off. For China, you would have to go to a physical embassy, I believe, or visa center in your country and do it in person. For Vietnam, where I was planning to go a couple of days after breaking my back, I had already done the visa process and it was just online, took a couple days, very simple. You wanna make sure that your passport is not gonna expire anytime soon. They won't really let you board flights if it's gonna expire in the next 6 months. You're gonna also wanna get passport pictures taken at your local Walmart or wherever it's easiest and most convenient for you to go, and get a ton of copies. It was kind kind of an odd request when I got mine taken and asked for like 30 copies, but I knew that I would need 2 to 4 depending on the countries that I was going to. For in-person visas like Cambodia, I needed 2. If I were to trek in Nepal, I'd need like 6. You definitely just want a bunch of passport photos that have been taken in the last 6 months on your person and ready to go. If you're woofing or doing a workaway, like I said, your accommodation is pretty much taken care of, but if you're backpacking, I highly recommend staying in hostels because you get to meet other people. And I know some people are weirded out by the idea of sleeping in a bunk with other people, especially in a mixed gender room, but I honestly preferred being in the mixed rooms because I felt like it was just a lot more laid back and it was easier to meet people and like binary anyways. For booking hostels, you're gonna wanna download the apps Hostelworld, Agoda, and Booking.com. Another app that I highly recommend downloading is Maps.me. It saved my life so many times. You download the map of the area that you're going to, and then you don't need Wi-Fi or data or anything to see your route or to see how far something is from something else. And it's just super helpful, especially in planning the location of your hostel and also where you're going in a day. Free app, you gotta get it if you're gonna travel. You're probably gonna wanna book your hostel in a sensible place, whether that's near the airport you get in at or leave from, like if you have a later flight, or in the center city. So definitely you're gonna wanna keep the location of the hostel in mind and also make sure that it has good ratings and reviews. Make sure to check for bed bugs. If you want a more authentic experience, I would recommend Couchsurfing, where you go on the Couchsurfing website, make a profile for yourself, and you can find hosts in the place that you're staying who are offering up a couch or a floor or a bed in their home for free. You just kind of have to make that connection with them. I never did it because as a solo female traveler at 18, I didn't really feel comfortable doing it. I would love to if I had a friend with me for sure. It depends how you feel about it. For flights, I like to use Skyscanner, Shut Up and Go Flights, or Student Universe. All three have shown me the best deals possible, so definitely recommend those 3 sites. For other forms of transportation, like buses or trains, I recommend using One2Go or Rome to Rio. They help you map out different ideas and give you sample costs for each route and the time that it would take. Those are super helpful sites, and there's a Rome to Rio app. I just never have enough storage on my phone for apps. I find that those apps are helpful for figuring out possible routes and how long it might take to get from one place to the next. But for actually booking your buses or boats or trains, I would recommend going in person because the websites can charge a bit, and I find it a lot more safe to see the schedule and talk to a live person and make sure like it's not a fake bus. I think that's just a me thing. You can also shop around looking at the different ticketing agencies in person for the different prices, so that's also pretty helpful. Food is gonna vary by your dietary restrictions or lack thereof and where you are and if you wanna eat more street food or in a restaurant. I ate a lot of street food in Thailand, but more in restaurants in the Philippines, therefore the cost went up. Also, if you have a restricted diet, there are surprisingly a decent amount of, for example, vegan options because they know like the kind of travelers that are coming, but it's still more expensive and more difficult to find. Allow flexibility in your budget, and you never want to be at a point where you can't afford food if you're hungry or not feeling well because it's gonna cut too far into your budget. Going out and partying is definitely cheaper than in the States. Like a whole night out might be the cost of 1 drink in New York, but a whole night out is also the cost of what I thought my daily budget was gonna be. Limiting the amount of times you go out, or at least the amount of drinks you have, is gonna help you stay on track with your budget. I definitely did not factor that into my budget before I left as well. I don't know why. I was so envious of the people I met who were just traveling for a shorter amount of time than me because they could shop for all the souvenirs and all the gifts for their families, all the clothes, but I had no room in my bag and no extra money. I would sometimes allow myself to get like little pieces of jewelry that were special to me, but I really didn't have that much room in my luggage, and I did buy the clothes that I should have packed in the first place, but if you can help it, don't shop. It's really nice to take a break from materialism. Yeah, I would say that. And buy gifts for the people who really mean something to you. You can't come back with a whole extra suitcase full of things for others, especially when you're on this tight budget, and I think they'll understand that. Experiences are often more than you think they're gonna cost. I didn't realize it would cost $1 to $5 to get into a temple or a waterfall or a museum. Cooking classes, zip lines, all the fun things that you're gonna wanna do are gonna cost probably more than your daily budget, even if your daily budget is as low as mine. So if you can help it, you're gonna want money for those extra experiences, especially if you're adventurous and wanna do that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if you just want a cultural experience and exchange, you can do that for free with a workaway, with a local. So that's definitely something to consider. Another surprise budget thing is transportation day to day. Also something I forgot to count into my budget because being in New York, I would walk pretty much everywhere. So I didn't even realize how much transportation would cost. Taxis, tuk-tuks, trains, public buses were cheap, but you also have to have a little wiggle room for if you want to just go places, and isn't that the point, to go places? I would never pack like I did for my first trip. It's a common mistake and it's okay, but backpacking bags are expensive. I tried to find a cheap one, but my mother insisted that we didn't want it to break, and she was right. But still, I got a 55-liter Osprey, and I thought it was so great because it broke into 2 backpacks, and then I didn't have to buy an extra day bag, and I could just carry all my things in one. But when I overstuffed my bag, I couldn't get that little piece back on. It also rusted when it hit the ocean because I fell in when I jumped off a boat in like Raleigh, I think. Not even like a dangerous thing, just like we had to jump into the ocean a little bit before walking to the shoreline because the boat couldn't go any further, but it just rusted immediately then. Wasn't a fan of that backpack, but also having a bigger bag makes everything more expensive and more annoying. It's harder to just wander when you have this big bag that you can't carry around when you're wandering a city all day. If it's over 14 pounds and of a certain size, it has to be checked into the airplane, which adds at least $20 to every flight you take. Pack as little as you can. I met this Finnish guy when I was with a group of people in Thailand, and we had all gone to like the hot springs and a cave that day, and he took me back on his motorbike because I hadn't learned how to ride one yet. And before meeting everyone else back in the town for dinner, we stopped at his hostel because he was leaving the next day and he needed to get his bag. I was waiting for him in the lobby, and he comes out with this tiny little ripped up backpack, and I'm like, that's your day bag? Or it was all he had. He just had like one change of clothes, maybe, just the stuff on his back. It was so chill, and that's what I aspire to do the next time I backpack. Just live. It's not that hard. It's an experience. What you really need depends on the season and the location of where you're going. If you're going somewhere cold, your luggage is gonna have to be a lot bigger and bulkier than if you're going to Southeast Asia. You want functional items. I made the mistake of packing only conservative temple going clothes, thinking that I might go to a different temple every single day of my trip and didn't want to be underdressed when that happened. Yeah, I went to some temples, but I also went to the beach all the time, and wearing a shoulders covered 3/4 sleeve black top wasn't helpful. There are some places where conservative dress is required and some not, and you're gonna want to be able to dress for the weather and have things to wear that are respectful when you need it, but also things that are more comfortable for days when you're more active and not going anywhere religious. No matter what, you're gonna want to dress respectfully. Definitely make sure to follow the customs of the country that you're going to when you pack, but at the same time have a good balanced mix of things. You can also buy clothing there if you need to, and it's gonna be cheaper than at home. For example, I bought hiking boots that were like $150 at home because I thought I was gonna go hiking in Nepal, and I'm not even doing that now, but you could just buy everything in Kathmandu and it would have taken so much weight out of my bag, and it would have been so much cheaper if I had just waited until then. So definitely trust that you're gonna find the things that you need in the place that you're gonna need them. Less is more. You wanna be able to travel freely, and how nice would it be if you could just have one tiny backpack, like a normal school day or something and just get around the city that you want and wander. It would be amazing. I hope that this video helped you out planning your travel gap year or backpacking trip. Leave me any questions in the comments down below and feel free to DM me on Instagram. My username is Serena Weil. In the next video, I'm gonna get into why it could be beneficial for you to take a travel gap year and the reasons behind me taking one. So I hope that you stay tuned and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.